Alrighty, so news of the week episode on this Thursday evening. So obviously, the big headline, at least in the last couple of days, it's been about Gregg Berhalter being fired from the U.S. men's national team, and that there's a lot of talking point of who exactly is his replacement. Now, doing my video where I talk about Gregg Berhalter tenure with the U.S. and I talk about the potential candidate. One of those names is Jurgen Klopp, and I can understand why a lot of people want Jurgen Klopp. I mean, he's done an amazing job doing his time with Liverpool and Borussia Dortmund. But I also did mention the fact that, just because a head coach and a manager does well in the club level, it doesn't mean it's guaranteed that it will translate into the international level too, because people forget that coaching in the club level is completely different than coaching in the international level. Well, in the end, as much as all US fans were hoping Jurgen Klopp will accept the job, he basically said no. He is not interested in the U.S. men's national team job, and he, of course, have also said that he's rather take a year or two off from coaching, and that's kind of understandable because after he decided that he was going to leave Liverpool this season, he already mentioned that he was going to take a year or two off, just kind of take a break and maybe even spend time with family and away from managing for a bit, which again that also kind of brings up another discussion of, well, could there ever be a case where we might see him becoming the head coach of this team in 2026, especially after the World Cup. But obviously the biggest name out there is now off the table, and now it's going to be interesting who's going to be there. Obviously, I think the other big names that I heard of is Irving Renier with the Saudi Arabia team. Obviously, we know why exactly that is the case because I think he really shot up the list because of that one video where he made a very good motivational speech to those Saudi player in that game against Argentina, and obviously we know what happened in that game where Saudi Arabia recorded probably the most famous victory that they ever had in their national team history, not beating what ends up to be the champion of the world just a couple of weeks later. There's also talk about Wilfred Nancy potentially as the head coach of the U.S. men's national team because he's done a really good job with Columbus. But obviously, I know there's a couple of candidates that are more likely could be the case where I'm pretty sure it's going to lead to a meltdown between the U.S. men's national team fan base. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but obviously Steve Cherundolo I think might be right now the top candidate, and I guarantee you that if Steve Cherundolo is going to be named as the U.S. men's national team head coach, yeah, there's going to be a bit of a meltdown in the U.S. fan base because they will feel like this is going to be Gregg Berhalter 2.0, and it's understandable because between Steve Cherundolo and Gregg Berhalter, they have very similar resume where they've done okay, and well, I wouldn't say okay. I don't want to disrespect Steve Cherundolo and his job with LAFC. He's done very good with LAFC and even winning an MLS Cup with the team. But unfortunately, I mean, is that kind of the guy you want to give a job? And the same goes for Jim Kern as well. And I think maybe there's even more of a meltdown if Jim Kern would be hired because Jim Kern, yes, I know he's done very well with the Union. But the problem with Jim Kern team is that they never get over the hump, and that's kind of the whole point what the U.S. are trying to do heading into this 2026 World Cup on home soil. So yeah, definitely going to be the interesting talk point, and I don't expect the U.S. Soccer Federation to announce as the new head coach very soon. Obviously, there's not going to be a competitive game for the U.S. until the Gold Cup in 2025. Then of course we have the World Cup, and one thing that is going to be interesting about this upcoming World Cup, no World Cup qualifying window because the U.S. Along with Canada and Mexico automatically are going to be qualified for the tournament because they are the hosts of the tournament. So there's a lot of time for the U.S. Soccer Federation to choose their man, but there's no doubt that they're definitely going to be spending that time, and they're definitely going to hope that they chose the right man because, like I said, this is vital for this team in terms of who is going to be the right man. And it feels like we're back in 2018 all over again, where I feel like this is a similar feeling right now with the national team as what we were back in 2018, where in 2018 it was fresh off of a not only a huge disappointment of the U.S. missing out of the World Cup, but also just an unthinkable feeling and a feeling that something's got to change, and that there's even a bit of a change of philosophy where the U.S. really started to focus on the youth movement, and they of course decided to think that Gregg Berhalter was the right man to guide the youth movement. And in some way, he has won trophy throughout his time. I mean, I mentioned it before too. I know, people would say that that's not enough because of the way that it doesn't seem like this team really improved on the global scale. But still, he has won trophies, and he has definitely won more of them compared to the previous U.S. men's national team head coach that we've seen before. But again, the expectation has definitely gone up for this team, and that again heading into these next couple of years, with them playing in friendlies and also playing in the Gold Cup. Now, I know those competition might not be things that the U.S. can use as almost a measuring stick for this upcoming World Cup, but there's no doubt that again expectation is going to be high, and that if the U.S. is going to improve for this upcoming World Cup on home soil, they have to hire the right man to do so, and not to mention these players that is currently in the pool and could be in contention for that 2026 World Cup. They need to step it up too, because as much as I've always talked about the head coach and the manager can basically make a difference to get this team to the next level. Players need to perform at the same rate, and this is where I also mentioned the fact that now it's up to the players to see that they need to show that they were held back because of the shackle that Gregg Berhalter put them in. Because if they don't, then yeah, there's going to be a big question about this player pool as well, and whether or not if it's good enough for them to get to the next level. Anyway, let us now talk about other news that is not related to talk about the U.S. men's national team coaching job. Because again, this last couple of days, there's been just kind of if you look at American soccer in general, even in MLS, it's been the main talking point for the past couple of days ever since Gregg Berhalter was fired. But another other important member got fired this week, and in fact, this happened today. Is Bill Manning? He is fired from Toronto FC after it was announced that he of course got fired following the Canadian Championship exit against Forge FC, and that yeah, feel like that was kind of the final straw. I mean, I know Forge is definitely a decent team, and that this is a team that of course also went into the CONCACAF Champions Cup as well, and historically has been a powerhouse in the CPL. But let's be honest, an MLS team should be able to beat a CPL team no matter if they're a powerhouse or not, and that is definitely I feel like between that victory and the one that I remember Pacific of a stunning upset against Vancouver a couple of years ago that cost Mark Dos Santos' job. You knew that something has to change, and in this case, TFC fans finally got their wish. I mean, they've been demanding Bill Manning to be fired from this team ever since then. This team go through a sharp decline like we've seen the past couple of years. And now they get their wish. So again, this is still part of the process where this team is definitely trying to go through this deep rebuild and trying to hope that they can, of course, get the right man there. And I do think that John Herman has done a good job in terms of. I know things have not gone well for TFC at least in the last month or two, but we thought that this was going to happen. Like we knew that there was going to be a huge drop off, and the reality was going to set in. But still, you could say that I feel like even though these last couple of months has been very disappointing for TFC, there's definitely some progress that is being made in these last couple of months. You can say that it's just the growing pains of this deep rebuild and this just massive exodus of a cleanup that Toronto has to go through because of all the bad decisions that they made in previous year, and just that after this year they are going to at least complete part of the cleanup, and then maybe get out contract of players that just kind of hamstring this team, because there's still a lot of players on this team that I would not be surprised they might move on in the next offseason. That can definitely open some cap space and maybe open up some roster spot for this TFC team to start to build and get themselves back to being a competitive team. Now, Charlotte FC, they have announced that they have signed defender Allison Melinda to a new contract extension. This is no big surprise because Melinda, he's been one of the more improved player this season. I mean, after last season, which was a nightmare season for him, he has been much more improved and kind of live up to the expectation that what Charlotte thought that he was going to be. Like when he bought well, when he came to the Charlotte team and when Charlotte bought him last year, they knew that they were going to get a guy that is a very good defender. And I think last season the reason why he didn't live up to that expectation is young defender. You usually you're going to see that situation where maybe in the first year, especially coming into a new league, you of course have to settle in, and it feels like that was the case. But it feels like Melinda has finally settled in, and do not be surprised that he could be sold off for big amount of money because again he has a lot of talent on his disposal, and do not be surprised if Charlotte can cash in on that as soon as this upcoming off season. Consider how much he's been important to that Charlotte back line. Now, one player that is potentially on his way out of Charlotte is Scott Arfield. So he could be on his way out of Charlotte. Look like he's going to be moving back to the lower leagues in England, and I think that that's definitely a uh, huge sigh of relief if you're a Charlotte fan because I never understand when they decided to get Scott Arfield. Like, they were just making that midfield even more older than it should be. And that I think this is again part of the mistakes of the old regime left on the scene. But it seems like they're gonna get out of that contract. And now of course will open some cap space too because he takes a lot of the salary cap, and the contract that he has is just and especially with the way that he hasn't really done well during his time with Charlotte. I'm pretty sure Charlotte are really hoping to get out of that contract, and there's a chance that they could do so. So, heading into this upcoming transfer window with him potentially going back to England. Now moving on. So, Atlanta United, they are close to signing Atalanta forward Alexei Mitechuk for about $11 million. Now, obviously, this is potentially the Thiago Almada and Georgia Yakimakis replacement because he can actually play in both of the position. And 11 million euros is definitely a lot of money, but keep in mind Atlanta has a lot of money that they can spend this summer transfer window. I mean, not to mention, they're gonna get about $50 million worth of sale from all the players that they're selling. And one of those players that they're potentially going to sell is Caleb Wiley, as it has now reported that Chelsea has reached an agreement to sign Caleb Wiley for $11 million. Now, I know Caleb Wiley is a very good player. Obviously, he have made it to the Olympic squad, which I'll talk about in just a bit. But for $11 million, yeah, that's a little bit of an overpay for Caleb Wiley. But then again, this is Chelsea after all. I mean, Chelsea is a team that likes to spend a bunch of money and just kind of throw money of any player that move, and they don't really care whatsoever. Though maybe the financial fair play will have other ideas about it. But yeah, there's no doubt that I mean, if you're Atlanta United, you can't say no to that, especially the amount that they are going to get for Caleb Wiley, and that yeah, there's no doubt that they'll accept this deal. And I know probably Caleb Wiley won't be playing with Chelsea, at least with the main team, because Chelsea is just so stacked right now with a lot of youngsters. He'll probably join the loan army that Chelsea have always known for, but still, it's a good investment for Atlanta United, and especially getting a guy that I knew that this guy had a lot of talent ever since he stepped on the pitch with this Atlanta team, and they're reaping a good reward out of that. And another player that they're getting some good reward, and is a guy that remember Ezekiel Barco and how he was an Atlanta United player. Now, obviously, it didn't quite work out, but now it seems like it could work out in a big way in terms of Atlanta getting more money out of that deal that they originally did when they decided to sell him from River Plate, because now it seems like they're going to get about $11 million of sale as part of the sell-on fee after he's going to be going from River Plate to Spartak Moscow. That's a very interesting uh, destination and a club that he decided to join. Ezekiel Barco, consider of the so-called Russia and Ukraine kind of political Cold War that's going on right now, and I'll just keep it at that because don't want this video to get demonetized and go into a very controversial topic. But still, yeah, $11 million of a sale for that, and that yeah, again, Atlanta's gonna get a lot of spending money, and that it's gonna be interesting to see how they're gonna reinvest. And it feels like, as I mentioned, with them signing Alexei Matechuk, that might be the first of many pieces that they're going to do in terms of replacing some of these players, because Atlanta is going to open the checkbook. Garth Lagerwey is going to open the checkbook and start spending a lot of players. Has known to do this even during his time with the Seattle Sounders, where the summer transfer window is where he really started to go go big, and I will not be surprised. There's going to be a lot more Atlanta United rumors and a lot of big name player that's going to join this Five Stripes because, as their motto has said, Five Stripe don't stop when it comes to signing all these players that we'll see whether or not if they of course worked out. There has been some Atlanta players that worked out, and then there are some that just completely flopped. Now, New England, they are looking to make an offer to get Boca Junior for Luca Logano. Now, obviously, New England, their priority heading into the summer transfer window is potentially getting a new number nine because Giacomo Veroni. It's safe to say that he has definitely not lived up to the expectation. I mean, yes, he actually has done pretty well lately, consider of a rough start that he has, but there's no doubt that after spending 3 seasons now and not producing anywhere close to the DP tag that New England bought him in the first place. They need a new number nine, and we'll see whether or not if they can, of course, get this guy from Boca Junior. And I don't know too much about him, which is kind of crazy to say because he's coming from Boca Junior. You expect him to be a very good player, but also not to mention $7 million is the offer there. Yeah, they better hope that he's going to be a good player and he doesn't turn into another Giacomo Veroni as what we saw that is going to go down. I wouldn't say one of the biggest busts in league history because at least he has contributed in some, but definitely I would consider a bust in terms of the DP signing that New England was trying to get. And then LAFC has officially transferred Stepe Buke to Real Valladolid. In fact, I think the right word to say is that Real Valladolid basically triggered the purchase option because when LAFC decided to loan Stipe Buke to Real Valladolid, there was an option to buy. It seems like Buke has done a really good job with Real Valladolid, so they decided to buy him outright, and we'll see how much LAFC, of course, will get as a result of that. Now, moving on to news that is not related to transfer and also player sales. New England. So it is now announced that their new stadium is expected to approve by the Massachusetts Senate. So obviously they have the rendering and they're planning to build their new stadium in Everett, Massachusetts. Now obviously it still has to be approved by the state. I think it's already been approved by the city council, but now if the state of course approve, that's when they can of course begin to build the stadium. Now it's going to be interesting to see when exactly they're going to start. I mean, there's still a lot of hurdle to trying to declare before they actually can put shovel on the site. But if this does get approved by the Massachusetts Senate, that's one step closer of them finally building a soccer specific stadium. And honestly, it's great to see that New England finally do so because I think this kind of all started when we saw Inter Miami decided to finally get that deal done, and then I think NYCFC was also a big part of it because NYCFC for a long time was the butts of jokes about stadium issue, but they finally got their stadium deal done, and now they're already start building it and should be ready by the time even before the World Cup begins here in 2026. Now the pressure I think is now with New England because I think New England is kind of the last team I could say that are playing well. I think between them and the Chicago Fire are probably the last two teams that you could say that might need are playing some in some obsolete NFL stadium and kind of almost like MLS 1.0 level kind of stadium that they need to of course have their own soccer specific stadium. And notice I mentioned that and not the other teams that also play in NFL stadium. Seattle, I know they have their vision of maybe moving out of Lumen, but I think it's good that they of course will or I think they'll probably just stay at Lumen. And keep in mind when Lumen was built, it was thinking that there was going to be a soccer team that played there. And when they were built, that they also kind of did the same thing that Atlanta decided to do. It's not just going to be accommodating football, but also accommodate a soccer team as well. Obviously, Atlanta's not going to move out of MBS anytime soon. Charlotte is kind of an interesting cases where Charlotte, of course, they're gonna get part of the renovation that Bank of America Stadium is gonna be alongside with the Carolina Panthers. I mean, David Tepin had mentioned that a couple of times. So again, I don't think they'll probably be moving, and they also have some good attendance throughout their time, even though they're kind of also playing in an obsolete MLS 1.0 stadium. And really, the only two teams I would say that really might need to finally build their soccer specific stadium is New England And Chicago, of course, is the other team, and Chicago could be an interesting thing question. Consider they built themselves a soccer-specific stadium only for them to move back because the soccer-specific stadium that they built was so badly placed and so obsolete that they basically decided just to return to the Soldier Field and return to where they first started. Now, moving on into finally talk about the U.S. Olympic roster. So it was announced a couple of days ago. So keep in mind, what's interesting about the Olympic roster is that you can only have 18 players in the core player. You can also have four alternative, which that means in total you can have like a 22-man roster, which is very little compared to what we see in other FIFA sanctioned tournament. But in terms of the U.S. Olympic roster, there's only two goalkeeper that's in the core squad. You got Patrick Schulte and Gaga Slolina. Something tells me Schulte is probably going to get the starring role. I mean, this is nothing knock on Slolina, but Schulte is probably the better goalkeeper right now, especially getting more starting minutes. Then in terms of defender, you got Maxi Diaz, Nathan Harriel, Miles Robinson, one of the three players that is over age that you can of course pick. John Token, Caleb Wiley, and Walker Zimmerman, the other player that is over age that is allowed to be on this team. Kind of interesting that when they decided to choose the overage player, they decided to go both on two of them out of three are defenders, and that's a strange choice considering what is the big issue for this U.S. Olympic team, as I've seen throughout a couple of friendlies that they've been playing, a couple of tune-up matches that they play heading into this Olympics, is that they don't have goal scoring ability. Goal scoring has been a problem for this team, and as we'll see, getting to the midfield and forward, that's kind of shows you a little bit of that. We got Gianluca Lucio, Benjamin Kamaski, Jack McGlynn, Georgi Mihailovic, which is the third player that is overage that's going to be in this tournament, and Tanner Tessman as the midfield in this. Then looking at the forward group, you got Paxton Aronson, Taylor Booth, Duncan McGuire, Kevin Paredes, and Griffin Yao. And I mean, when you look at those names, it's not a big surprise that you see this team has trouble in terms of goal scoring because all those players that is in the forward group, none of them really kind of scream that they could be a legitimate goal scorer. Sure, if Duncan McGuire was still Duncan McGuire from last season, that could be the case. But you know he still scored goals for Orlando City, but he's definitely not at an elite full rate as he did in first season. It's kind of suffer a bit of from that second season syndrome, and also the after effect of the Blackburn Rovers uh, moves that fall apart in the worst way possible. So, yeah, again, that is a big concern with this team. Alternative, you got Josh Atencio, Jake Davis, Johan Gomez, and John Postgame as the other alternative goalkeeper for this U.S. Olympic roster. Obviously, I think the biggest snub out of this list, and one that it's been a big talking point of why exactly he's not in the Olympic squad, Diego Luna, and I can understand why that is the case. In fact, I think it was a big mistake. I think for the U.S. Olympic team to not include Diego Luna because Diego Luna has done an amazing job with RSL. I mean, he's been on fire lately, and I think he's on fire mainly because he's sending a message to the U.S. Olympic team and even the U.S. Soccer Federation that yeah, I am pissed that you did not decided to choose me from your roster, and I think that's going to be something that if the U.S. does struggle in the Olympics, which I think they will be, because I am concerned about the goal scoring of this team, and the fact that you know there's going to be games where if they're going to win some of these Olympic games, they have to score those goals. I mean, defense, I think at times it can be a little concern as well. They need the goal scoring ability, and if they don't, they're not going to get out of this group. And we're going to talk about yet another example of the failure of the U.S. Soccer Federation. A chance for this team to finally make it to the Olympic for the first time since 2008, and they don't do anything with it and get knocked out of the group potentially because they just don't have those goal scorer and those difference maker to really go deep into the Olympics. But there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of looking at this news of the week episode. As always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of these news, and if there's any news I didn't mention on the board, let me know in the comments below as always. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.